This video is going to prepare you for the Minnesota Teaching Licensure Examinations, or MTLE Pedagogy Secondary Subtest 1. This video is going to cover three things: what's on the test and how to study for it, the most likely concepts that will be on the test, and we're going to look at a few practice questions. Let's get you ready for this test. Now, the MTLE Pedagogy Secondary Subtest 1 consists of approximately 50 total questions, coming from two overarching sub-areas. The sub-areas are student development, learning, and diversity, and responsive learning environments. Each sub-area is worth about 50% of the exam. This means you'll see about 25 questions from each. Within these two sub-areas, you'll find three objectives. In Sub-Area 1, we have understanding development during the secondary years, understanding learning processes, and understanding student diversity. Sub-Area 2 covers establishing a safe, inclusive, and positive learning environment, creating an organized and productive learning environment, and using effective communication techniques. If this seems overwhelming, don't worry. The 240 study guide will make it easy. Let's look at the first objective within Sub-Area 1. This sub-area focuses on understanding the development of students during their secondary years, including their physical, social, emotional, moral, and cognitive development. This objective is all about understanding students' development during the secondary years. How can you provide learning opportunities that support them? You should know the general patterns of how humans develop, from early childhood to early adulthood. There are four main domains of development: physical, body growth and movement; social, interactions with people and the environment; cognitive, knowledge and intellectual skills; and emotional, processing and understanding feelings. There are many factors that influence a student's development. These external factors can both positively and negatively affect development. Positive factors include parental care or attention, appropriate discipline, healthy diet, physical activity, socialization, and access to educational material at home. Negative factors, on the other hand, can be instability at home, abuse or neglect, poor nutrition, lack of activity, lack of socialization, and lack of educational materials. Whew, that was quite the warm-up. Let's move on to the next phase of our mental workout. Next up is Objective 2, understanding learning processes. This objective is all about cognitive development, or the process students go through in terms of their thinking and reasoning skills. The developmental psychologist Jean Piaget developed a stage theory of cognitive development. According to Piaget, children go through 4 stages throughout their mental maturation. From birth to 2 years old, children comprehend the world through objects and gain object permanence. For example, an object exists even if it's not in sight. From 2 to 7 years old, they head into egocentric thought. This means they believe others see, hear, and feel exactly as they do. They also begin to understand symbolic thought, or the idea of one thing standing in for something else. However, they don't use logic to combine or separate ideas. From first grade to adolescence, students get into logical thought. They can picture mentally how things work and don't always need to see or physically manipulate objects to understand them. They also use inductive reasoning, or drawing conclusions based on specific observations, along with a bunch of new mental abilities like conservation. Finally, from 12 years and beyond, students can manipulate ideas in the mind without reliance on concrete manipulation. They'll use deductive reasoning to form hypotheses about the world and test them in a systematic manner to reach a conclusion. Woo! That was a lot of information. Luckily, this test focuses specifically on secondary students, or the last category, although it is important to understand the span of development. Knowing what we know now about cognitive development, let's talk about classwork. Let's take a look at the curriculum for 12-year-olds and above. Here is when we reach mathematical calculations, creative thinking, and abstract reasoning. It's important to remember that this progression is gradual, and no two students will move at exactly the same speed. They might be fighting over the same crushes, but that's a different story. Let's move on. Understanding student diversity. You'll need to understand how to meet the needs of students with diverse backgrounds while promoting the learning and achievement of all students. There is no sole accepted definition of the term intelligence. It's like Beyonce versus Taylor. There are different ways to measure greatness. Let's explore some ways others have defined intelligence. The theory of general intelligence, developed by Charles Spearman, used the term G factor to refer to general intelligence. Spearman used a wide range of aptitude tests to argue that intelligence is a general cognitive ability. In other words, it can be measured. Then we had Lewis Thurston, who developed a multiple factor view of intelligence based on 7 primary mental abilities: verbal comprehension, reasoning, perceptual speed, numerical ability, word fluency, associative memory, and spatial visualization. Howard Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences offers 8 distinct forms of intelligence, which can't be numerically measured or expressed. These intelligences include verbal, linguistic, mathematical, spatial, bodily kinesthetic, musical, interpersonal, intrapersonal, and naturalistic. Robert Sternberg's triarchic theory of intelligence also offers a multiple factor view of intelligence, but he limits intelligence to 3 categories: analytical intelligence, creative intelligence, and practical intelligence. Here's the good news. None of these theories are perfect. It's all about learning from them and applying them with your students. Again, like Beyonce and Taylor, maybe all these theories can be on our playlist. Next up, Subarea 2, learning environment. This sub-area is all about creating a learning environment that is safe, organized, productive, and supportive. It makes up about 50% of the exam, or approximately 25 questions. As a reminder, Subarea 2 covers establishing a safe, inclusive, and positive learning environment, creating an organized and productive learning environment, and using effective communication techniques. First up, establishing a safe, inclusive, and positive learning environment. The ideal classroom feels like a community. It's a positive place where learners collaborate and grow together. But how do we get there? Icebreaker games and activities are a great start. Throughout the school year, class check-ins or meetings can help build relationships. Make sure to greet students each day, and even provide time for them to greet each other. Write positive notes or letters of encouragement to students, and set up a system for them to do the same for each other. Yes, even teenagers benefit from these practices. Of course, the most important factor isn't games or letters. It's you. A positive attitude means letting students know you believe in their abilities and will be there to support them. Being mindful of diversity and examining how your own beliefs or biases may, even unintentionally, affect students. Striving for all students to have a positive classroom experience, and really listening to students to help build trust. A positive teacher-student relationship means students feel comfortable enough to ask questions and take risks. Students view their teacher as a trusted adult they can turn to for help when needed. And teachers show enthusiasm towards the subject or material being taught. If students can tell you aren't very enthusiastic about the lesson, why should they be? Look for ways to add extra interest by making a real-world or personal connection to what you're teaching. Teaching about taxonomic systems? Share and categorize samples from the last time you went on a hike. Let's take a look at the next objective, creating an organized and productive learning environment. This skill is all about getting work done. How can we optimize our classroom routines, setup, materials, and student behavior? Did you know interior design would be part of your job as an educator? Really? There are important considerations to make when designing the layout of your classroom. Both instructional activities and the needs of the students should be taken into account. Ask these questions to guide the physical layout of a classroom. Are all students able to access what they need in the space? Do all students have a clear view of what or who they need to see? Can the teacher see and easily reach all students? Have the special needs students been taken into consideration? teachers should be mindful of student seating arrangements. Different setups lend themselves best to different tasks. For example, when listening to any type of presentation, whether from the teacher, a guest speaker, or fellow classmates, students should all be able to see the speaker. Facing front typically works best. When the whole class is having a discussion, it's helpful for everyone to be seen. When collaborating on a group assignment, students should sit together and walkways should be open so the teacher can easily move to check on each group. When the teacher is working with a small group of students, the rest of the class should still be in view. No matter the arrangement, teachers should remember that proximity and visibility are imperative tools. You should always be able to see and walk to your students. Even if they're deep in their feelings and want to disappear, don't let them. The last concept we're going to highlight for this section is using effective communication techniques. This may seem straightforward. After all, talking is pretty easy to do, but effective communication is another story. Take a look at this clip from our 240 study guide to see what I mean.
Communication with students must be clear and specific. Remember, students don't know what they don't know. For the classroom to run smoothly, students must clearly understand expectations and directions. Teachers need to clearly communicate what they want students to do and how the students are supposed to make it happen.
Unlike the kids, who are going to have a ton of communication issues between each other, you can make direct and honest communication easy. We've got some practice questions for you now. This will give you an idea of what the exam will actually look like. We'll be answering one question related to each objective we covered in sub-areas 1 and 2. Got your notes ready? Let's go. To start, let's test your knowledge of the 4 domains. The second day of school, a teacher creates an in-class activity that encourages students to work together to solve a problem. The teacher assigns groups randomly by counting off so that students are paired with classmates they may not know well. Which of the 4 domains of human development would this activity target? Social, cognitive, physical, or emotional? There are actually 2 correct answers here. Students would be encouraged to interact with each other in a productive way. This would help develop social skills and build relationships between new classmates. Also, this activity asks students to solve a problem using prior knowledge, critical thinking, and intellectual skills. Nice job! Okay, this next question is going to focus on understanding student diversity. Picture this. While developing a lesson plan, a health teacher has incorporated activities that require students to analyze a set of data and graphs to form hypotheses about the current overall health of a group of people. After analyzing this information, students are asked to make recommendations to improve the prognosis of the group. These activities will appeal to which learning style of students? A. Visual spatial, B. Interpersonal, C. Verbal linguistic, or D. Logical mathematical. Let's walk through these answers. There are some visual aspects involved in this activity through graphs, but not enough to call it visual spatial. There is no information that indicates this activity would appeal to interpersonal learners who enjoy interacting with others through discussion or debate. And students who are verbal linguistic learners enjoy reading and writing activities, unlike this one, which means the correct answer is D. This activity would appeal to students with logical mathematical learning styles due to reliance on numbers and critical thinking skills. 3 down, 3 to go. We're moving into sub-area 2 now and starting with establishing a safe, inclusive, and positive learning environment. Which of the following strategies best supports a teacher's goal to promote positivity in the classroom? A. Contacting each parent with a message about their child's strengths. B. Allowing students to choose partners to work with. C. Introducing detailed learning objectives at the start of each class. And D. Encouraging students to self-assess with progress journals. This is tricky. These are all effective elements in an enjoyable classroom. However, one answer is best. Answer A. Nice. Next up, creating an organized and productive learning environment. Mrs. Clark finds that some of her students are not engaged in class discussion. Which of the following would be the most effective way to set up the space to encourage students' engagement in the class discussion? A. Require each student to provide at least one comment to the discussion. B. Arrange student desks into rows where each row faces the front of the classroom. C. Have each student provide a topic for a classroom discussion. Or D. Arrange desks in a circle so that all students face each other. Remember how we talked about organizing desks to fit different goals? Now think about Mrs. Clark's goal in the question. With that in mind, the correct answer to the question has to be D. Arranging the desks in a circle is the most likely strategy to increase student participation in class discussions because all students can see and be involved in the conversation. How about an effective communication question? What might that look like? Which of these is a verbal communication strategy being used by a teacher? A. Using different voices to convey characters in a story. B. Tapping the desk of an off-task student. C. Using hand gestures to help students remember the parts of a cell. Or D. Giving high fives to students as they enter the classroom. Don't overthink this one. All of these are communication strategies, but the only verbal communication strategy is A. With that, we've reached the end of our questions. Nice job! Hopefully you got a sense of the kind of assessments you'll encounter on the exam. Thanks for sticking with me from start to finish. If you found it helpful, give it a like. There is still plenty more to learn. Thousands of teachers have passed their certification exams using our study guides. If you really want to make sure you're prepared for the MTLE Pedagogy Secondary Subtest 1, take the next step and subscribe to the 240 Study Guide. It has hours of videos, so you can watch or listen while doing chores. It is test-aligned, so you know precisely what you need to study. And it has hundreds of practice questions, so you can be sure you're ready. And it has the money-back guarantee. So click the link below right now to get started.